Hi everybody, welcome. This is Miss Childers from Track 3. Today we're going to read a passage about the Korean War and why there are two Koreas. On June 25, 1950, the Korean War began when some 75,000 soldiers from North Korea poured across the 38th parallel. That was the border between two countries, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea to the north and the Republic of Korea to the south. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea was an ally of the Soviet Union. The Republic of Korea was allied with the United States. This attack was the first military action of the Cold War, 1945 to 1991. The Cold War was a larger conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union. It was called cold because the US and Soviet Union didn't fight each other directly. It was mostly a war of threats. By July, the United States and its allies, working with the United Nations, had entered the war. They fought to help South Korea. As far as American officials were concerned, it was a war against the forces of communism led by the Soviets. Under communism, one political party controls everything about a country's government and society. The two Koreas. Korea had been controlled by the Japanese Empire, but after Japan lost World War II, 1939 to 1945, the United States and Soviet Union occupied Korea. They split control of the country along the 38th parallel. The Soviets controlled the area north of the line, and the Americans controlled the area to its south. By the end of the 1940s, two new countries had formed. The South was controlled by the anti-communist ruler Syngman Rhee. The United States backed He. The North was controlled by communist ruler Kim Il-sung. He was backed by the Soviet Union. The Korean War and the Cold War. To American officials, the North Korean attack was not simply a border dispute on the other side of the globe. They saw it as the first step in a communist takeover of the world. They believed the United States must fight. At first, the U.S.-led war effort in Korea was designed simply to get the communists out of South Korea. This effort went badly for the U.S. and its allies. The North Korean army was well-disciplined, well-trained, and well-equipped. Rhee's forces were frightened, confused, and often fled the battlefield. Over time, U.S. war goals changed. President Harry Truman decided he wanted to kick communists out of North Korea as well. He was supported by General Douglas MacArthur, the U.S. military commander in charge of Korea. At first, this new approach was a success. A sea invasion at Incheon pushed the North Koreans back to their side of the 38th parallel. American troops crossed the border and headed north. They approached the Yalu River, the border between North Korea and Communist China. The Chinese started to worry about protecting themselves. Chinese leader Mao Zedong sent troops to North Korea. He also warned the United States to keep away from the Yalu River unless it wanted full-scale war. MacArthur wanted a wider war. This was something that President Truman and his advisors did not want. They were afraid a wider war would involve the Soviet Union and perhaps lead to nuclear war. It might even lead to World War III. However, General MacArthur did want a wider war. He believed anything less was giving in to the communists. MacArthur publicly criticized Truman's approach, causing Truman to fire him. The Korean War reaches a stalemate. In July 1951, President Truman and his new military commanders started peace talks. Still, the fighting continued along the 38th parallel. The talks dragged on for 2 years. Finally, an agreement was reached on July 27, 1953. It drew a new border near the 38th parallel that gave South Korea an extra 1,500 square miles of territory. It also created a 2-mile wide zone between the two sides that still exists today, and that is the DMZ zone. Casualties of the Korean War. The Korean War was short but bloody. Nearly 5 million people died, and more than half of these were civilians. Almost 40,000 Americans died in Korea, and more than 100,000 were wounded. Now that you've done the reading, you can go ahead and we're going to knock out the reading questions. What was the dividing line between North and South Korea? What was the main reason for the Korean War? What country comes in to help North Korea? And then just describe the end of the Korean War. Once you have those 4 answered, go ahead and share this document, your copy of the document, back to your teacher, and then you can go back to today's slides.